With the kitchen demoed and new skin on the walls, the next step was to take care of the ceiling. The old ceiling was split into two parts. In the kitchen was an ugly vinyl wallpaper that refused to come off after trying every method. The ceiling in the rest of the dining area was a thick texture. It wasn't popcorn ceiling, but it covered enough area that it wasn't worth attempting to scrape off. The old divider between the two ceilings was gone, and instead of trying to repair one side to look like the other, the easiest and best solution was to slap on a new ceiling. This would lower the ceiling about a half an inch, which in a house with relatively high ceilings goes completely unnoticed. It took one day to put up all the drywall, and it had to be done in a day because I only rented the drywall lift for 24 hours. There was some prep work that was required before we could start. Since I wasn't removing the old ceiling, I had to figure out a way to mark all the ceiling joists. The day before, I went up in the attic and drove screws through the ceiling right next to each joist on either side of the room. Then, from below, I marked the location of each joist. Before hanging any drywall, we marked the full length of the joists with a heavy chalk line, and even marked the top of the walls at the end of each line. This would guide us when driving screws, so we would go directly into the wood joists and not just the old ceiling. When hanging the drywall, we loaded it with construction adhesive, raised it up, maneuvered it into place, and drove in just an obscene amount of screws. Just like the walls, this ceiling was already an inch thick, made up of a half-inch drywall and a half-inch of plaster. So to mount the new drywall, we used 2.5-inch screws. Okay, with all the drywall up, the next step was mudding. I probably could have paid someone to do this quickly, but I'm stubborn and I wanted to do it myself. Also, I needed an excuse to buy stilts. Of course, before doing any work on the stilts, I had to make sure I was competent enough to walk around and such. Can't reach it. Here. Grab it. Silly pup. Mudding the ceiling was exhausting. I like to think I'm in pretty good shape, but this kicked my butt. I had to fill the holes from all 8,000 screws and the seams between the sheets. I was working into the wee hours of the morning for several nights, mudding, sanding, mudding again, sanding again, repeating the process over and over until the entire ceiling was smooth. I'm not a drywall pro by any means, but I sure got plenty of practice here. And now I'm super confident on stilts as well. After several days of laboring on the ceiling, it was finally time to paint. We started with a thick primer to coat the new drywall. We also took this time to prime the walls for a new color. We were a little bit confused at the splotchiness of the primer, but soon realized that areas where we laid it on a bit heavy just took a little bit longer to dry. It all dries the same color to give a clean and uniform surface to paint. However, this also revealed a few spots where I needed to do a bit more mudding, primarily at the butt joints of the drywall seams. Before repriming the new mud, I wiped it down with a damp towel to remove any dust. I also took this time to finish priming the walls, especially in the areas we had tested colors. Okay, time for the final paint. For the ceiling, we went with a flat white. I honestly don't remember why I chose flat white, but if I could go back and change it, I would use a different sheen like eggshell. There isn't anything wrong with the look of flat white, but cleaning it or touching up the paint is just a bit more difficult. The brush strokes on touch-up paint can show if you're not careful. Either way, it looks good, and I'm not changing it. For the walls, we used a very light gray, the same gray we used all throughout the house. It's a good shade that gives a bit of color, but doesn't jump out in your face. I think of it as a good accent color. This room is already starting to take shape. getting that much closer to putting in new cabinets. Okay, that's it for now. See ya.
Take pictures and take
Why are you in these pictures? You know I help too.
You're in it. You wanna be in this video?
No.
Doing great, honey.
Thanks.
Keep it up. Mrs. Spot. Right there.
Rude.
Oh, it's dark. What happened?